concern in the outdoors is a good, reliable, durable way to carry water. For years I've been trying to figure out a good primitive method of doing this, and haven't liked some of the traditional ways that water has been carried. Gourds, for instance, I don't like them because they're easily punctured. Wood or metal canteen of one kind or another I haven't liked because frankly I can't make one myself. Bamboo water containers were also used, but in order to get a piece of bamboo big enough to make it worth your while, you'd have to live in Asia. So I settled on a leather canteen. These are also called leather water bottles, and also called costrals. They date back at least to the Romans, and probably much earlier, because frankly the technology used in them is pretty much Stone Age. This one holds about 1.5 quarts of water, and we're going to try to make one a little bit bigger than this that hopefully will hold 2 quarts. But as you can see, it stretches out on the sides, and there's 4 main materials that you use to make these. The first one's your leather, of course. This is a fairly heavy leather. The directions that I read initially in making these called for about 6-ounce leather. This, I think, is much heavier than that and might even be a 10-ounce leather. You'll need some kind of heavy, durable cordage to sew it together. This is a heavy linen cord. And your other 2 main materials for this are going to be beeswax to coat the outside and waterproof it a little bit. And then also pine resin. This is brewer's pitch that I bought from Townsend & Sons. It's an online living history supplier. And you can make some of this yourself, but that's for another video. The easy thing to do, go ahead and order it, and the best supplier I know of is Townsend & Sons. Let's go ahead and get started in making a second one of these. Your first step in manufacturing one of these bottles is to get an approximate idea of the size that you want to make it into. I wanted to make one about the size of this 2-quart Army canteen. So the first step that I did was make the plug. This is a piece of hedge, or Osage orange, and I chose this because it's a very heavy, dense type of wood. You could also use hickory for it. Maple would probably be pretty good. Possibly oak, although oak may leave a bitter taste. So I approximated the size of the opening to this canteen, and as you can see, that's about the same size. Cut my wood, and frankly you could either whittle it down or use some kind of a rasp on it. I started making this plug that way, and frankly it was taking so long, I got out my trusty belt sander and basically used it as a milling machine and sanded down the plug until it was about the size that I wanted. Also, so that I could get a little bit of a grip on there, sanded that out. You can see how it fits in there, and then drilled a hole so that I can put a little lanyard on there to make sure that I don't lose my plug. So go ahead. Also, you'll want to have this kind of long enough so that water can't come and get up out of the neck of your canteen. But go ahead and first step, make some kind of a plug. The second step in the process is to make a pattern to follow. The way that I did mine is I figured that wanting to have a canteen that held about as much liquid as this one, I thought that I'd need it a little bit bigger than the outside, since initially when you cut this it's going to be flat. So I estimated that it was about the same size as this dinner plate. And so I figured that I'd make my 2 pieces the same size as the outside of that dinner plate. This is the initial pattern that I started with. As you can see, this is where I traced my plate. And then I added a little bit of extra space up here for the handles and some space for the neck. With the neck, I had to estimate how it would work with this leather because it's going to stretch, and you're also going to have seams on the sides. So the way that mine worked is I made sure that the pattern actually wrapped all the way around the plug that I'm going to use in the neck. This plug is a little bit bigger than the last one that I used, so when I adjust my pattern for this new one, I'm going to make it a little bit wider. Once you have your pattern estimated, go ahead and get your leather and make sure that you're using the flesh side of the leather, because that's going to be on the interior of your canteen. If you make any marks in the wrong place, you won't be able to see them since they're on the inside. And as I mentioned, I want to make this one a little bit bigger than my first canteen. So I'll go ahead and mark the neck. And like I said, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. And I'm going to compensate for a little bit of extra size over here. But down here around the bottom, since I want to try this to get this to hold a little bit more water, I'm going to enlarge the bottom, and hopefully this will help me fit in that half a quart to half a liter of extra water that I want to fit in here. And so there's our first side of this. Don't measure both sides yet. Wait till you have this one cut out, and then we'll use this to measure the second one. For cutting this, unless you want to carve up your furniture or you're using a workbench, get some kind of a board to cut it on. And I have an assortment of different knives, and use all three of them, frankly. But this is tough leather to cut, and it takes quite a while to do it. But basically, be careful and go ahead and start cutting out the entire piece.